Good day, friends. Welcome to Our Power is Within. I'm your host, Chasmith, and I am on a mission to inspire people to take their power back and help people to realize that each and every one of us has a healer within our own self. When we can create an environment that supports healing and get out of our own way, we are truly capable of healing in mind, body, and soul. Will you continue to help me spread this message so that we can inspire even more people in the coming year? There are several ways that you can help support this podcast and spread the message of empowerment, healing, and possibility. You could take a moment and leave a 5-star rating or a quick review on Apple Podcast. You could share your favorite episode on your social media, tagging me at Our Power is Within, or share an episode with a friend that you think could help them. For our weekly challenge, I would love to hear what you guys decided to rearrange in your life for last week. I would love to have you just send me a direct message or email me, whatever it is you would like to do, or take a picture of your new space and tag me. I'm actually in the middle of a remodel in my sunroom, which is quite a lot of rearranging. So I am excited about that. We are in the middle of our finishing touches. It's been a long work in progress. So, this week's challenge is all about spending some time with yourself in the mirror. And yes, you heard me right. Yourself in the mirror. My challenge is to simply spend 1 minute every day, just 1 minute a day, looking into the mirror at yourself, through your eyes and into your soul. No judgment, just be there with yourself. Notice what comes up for you. I do wonder what could happen over time if we all spent this time with ourselves and what we could discover. And I would love to hear how this goes for each of you. Our guest today is Ann Miller, and Ann has a really touching story to share. She tells us all about how she was able to heal herself from a laundry list of chronic physical symptoms and how that was far from the best part of her experience, because she shares with us some of the greatest gifts that came to her through this journey. And honestly, you guys, this conversation brought me to tears, not once, but twice. So, yeah, to say that it is an extremely moving conversation is an understatement. And I feel really confident that you all feel the same way. I do apologize in advance for the pauses and sniffles while I'm trying to pull it together in the moments of the emotion. Now, through Ann's experience, she's found herself in a really cool place, and she actually has a really unique business model that I really love. So I'm excited to share today's chat with everyone listening and allow Ann to share her story. Stay tuned and enjoy. All right, Ann, thanks for being on the podcast with me and everyone listening today.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I love when people actually reach out to me. I just think it's nice. It's great. I put it out there all the time, and I just love when people feel inspired or called to share a message or a story, and I think it's bold and courageous, so I really appreciate you taking that initiative.
Thank you. And I've just appreciated your podcast, and I've learned so much on it. And I did want to share my recovery story because I do think it gives hope to others.
I agree. That's why I'm here. And speaking of recovery story, I think that that's always a great place to start. It's just like a little brief introduction of who you are. And, we can talk about maybe what mind body symptoms you've overcome on your journey, how long you've been doing the work. And I would love for the listeners to get to hear what methods really supported your journey along the way.
Okay, great. So, in July of 2017, my back completely went out. I could not walk. I could not get up from bed. I was basically paralyzed. And of course, it was terrifying that I had had back pain since my 20s on and off, but it had never been to the point where my back just didn't work anymore, and my legs just didn't work anymore. But in 2017, that's where I found myself. And so, I did all of the normal things that I normally did after I finally, I thought I was gonna have to call the fire department, very honest with you, to get out of bed. Um, but my husband was able to drag me out. It just, on a scale of 1 to 10, it was an 11. I mean, it was just unlike anything I'd ever seen. So started back with all the normal, doctors, medications, physical therapy, chiropractors, just went all whole hog again, trying to get some relief. And I did start to feel some better. It took me like months and months and months, and I did start to feel some better, but I was always in pain. I was in pain every day, and on painkillers every day. Um, and then in July of 2018, so almost a year, almost exactly a year later, I was reaching to unplug a lamp and it totally happened again. I just fell to the floor. Everything's gone, quote unquote, out. Because that's what it feels like to you. Now, we know that backs don't go out, but that's what it feels like when you're living through it. And so I'm laying there, I'm crying, totally in fear. How could this happen again? I'm back to square one with this, I just, it was just so sad. And I started to think, why in July? Why always in July? And this was a watershed moment for me because I could admit to myself that there were some emotional components to July that made me very sad. And so I literally, as I'm laying in bed with nothing better to do, having tried everything, thinking I'm going to have surgery now for sure, I Googled back pain with emotional cause. Be- and up came all of this information on how much back pain can be caused, actually caused by emotional repression. And I started reading, I started learning, and I immersed myself. And I think I was just ready. I was so desperate at that time that I was ready to hear a different voice. And once I started to really learn, again, I'm laying in bed, I got nothing better to do. Once I started to learn how many things can be caused by stress and kind of chronic stress in your life, I started to recognize myself on every page of every book and every, YouTube video out there. It seemed like they were speaking to me. And I realized that this not only was the answer, this mind body's connection was not only an answer to the crippling back pain, but it was answer to a laundry list of diagnoses I had had over the years. And that's how my journey started.
Okay, so it was the back pain that led you down the path until you realized, oh, all these other things that I totally wrote off as being purely physical are actually all interrelated.
They were,
Yeah.
and it was amazing to me when I really got in there and started to research
Hmm.
um, the emotional component to a lot of, what diagnoses that you think have no emotional component at all.
Right. Yeah. When then you learn eventually that almost everything does. So in 2017, did you actually do anything for your back to go out? Like, or that you could at least attribute or like blame on the physicality, or was it really just completely a fluke?
No, I carried a bucket of water.
Oh,
So, but like I carry buckets of water all the time now, and my
right.
back doesn't go out.
Yeah.
As the saying goes, if it's too heavy for you to carry, you won't be able to carry it,
Uh-huh.
right? Like I can't carry, a refrigerator because it's too heavy to carry. A bucket of water was not too heavy. It was just kind of the impetus that I needed. Um,
Mhm.
your body whispers to you. Mine had been whispering to me for 30 years, and then finally it just started screaming.
Yeah. Yeah. So, what were some of the books or references that you found to be most helpful for you at the beginning of this journey when you were first like really immersing yourself in connecting the dots?
At the beginning, Dr. Sarno, of course, I read a lot because it was a back pain issue initially that I was
Mhm.
interested in, and that was kind of his specialty. That led me to Steve Ozanich. It also led me to Nicole Sachs, and journaling. Those were mainly the 3 at the
Mhm.
beginning, in 2018. In 2017, I was still asleep. I was still doing chiropractors and things like that, but in 2018, when it happened again a year later, I could finally admit there might be an emotional component, and that's when I opened my mind and my heart.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. So in 20 and how long after you kind of started researching all this did you really experience some serious relief, and at what point did you really start to be able to integrate healing in other dimensions as you started to connect the dots and realize these other issues you had kind of um just accepted as part of your reality, once you realized that they weren't a life sentence,
Mhm.
where did you start to find that relief?
I, um I began right away. Interestingly, when I first, became familiar with the emotional component with pain, and one of the early exercises was to go back in time and write down all the times that you had had a diagnosis or a pain diagnosis, and then what was happening in your life then. And so that was one of the very first exercises I did, and it was very illuminating. It was almost a complete match, right? I could absolutely say, this was happening in my life when this happened. This was happening in my life, that happened. And some of the stressors, I had back pain since my 20s. Um, some of the stressors were quite normal stressors, right? Working, that age of responsibility. You're no longer a kid anymore. You're looking at your life ahead of you and wanting to make your way. Those aren't necessarily bad stressors, but they are stressors. And I didn't have the capability of really recognizing my own perfectionism and recognizing how hard I was on myself and how much I drove myself and how that might be contributing to some of my health issues.
Yeah, absolutely.
In my 30s, I had a lot of stomach pain. Well, that's also when I had little kids. And so, you know, again, a happy stressor, but also a in aggravating stressor, right? Little kids will push your buttons. So, you know, just going back and replaying that and kind of reworking through that was very illuminating to me. And that was probably the first thing I did. And I got immediate shifting of my symptoms after that. So then they started, all these old symptoms kept firing up. And I've had like a laundry list of bizarre symptoms. So they kind of all just reappeared. Um, so I knew that I was on the right track because there was shifting and movement.
Mhm, mhm, exactly. So, you did the thing where you wrote down all of the pain diagnoses and then kind of correlated what happened to you in your life at that time, which is very awesome because that gives us awareness, and knowledge,
Mhm.
which is powerful. But what were your next steps? Like, knowing it is often not enough. It can create some shifts, but then usually there's more that we have to do to like overcome it. So
Absolutely.
yeah, so kind of what really helped you after that?
I The journaling aspect was one that spoke to me. I like writing, and I like at one time in my life, I thought I might be a writer. And so I thought, here's something I can do. I'll try the journaling. Several different people recommended expressive writing. Sarno was a big believer in it. Of course, Nicole Sachs, her whole thing is about it. Ozanich mentioned it. And so those are the people I had read. They had all talked about expressive writing. So I started on the journaling path. And it was life saving for me. It was very illuminating for me. I had been to therapy a few times in my life, but I had never really spent a lot of time with a therapist. So through journaling, I really got to know myself and really got to ex- kind of go back in time and uncover emotions that I had hidden from myself, um, and really got to, sit with myself in those different places in time in a way that I did not sit with myself when I was going through it. So, that was key for me. Journaling was a real key for me. Meditation was also key for me. I had tried meditation many times over the years. I had never liked it. Um, but because when I was doing it before, it was completely quiet. I was sitting and I was staring at a candle and I cross-legged. And I thought that's how you're supposed to do meditation. And of course, the little perfectionist in us, we want to do it the right way. And so this time when I went through meditation, I was like, I had heard from other people, you don't have to sit. You can use guided meditation. You can lay down. And so I was like, oh, anytime I can lay down, right? That's a good thing. So, um, so that's what I did. I did guided meditation. I laid down. I normally would do it on a topic that maybe had come up during journaling. So maybe if I'm journaling and something comes up about childhood, then maybe I'll, do a meditation about that. Or if something came up and it made me very anxious, I would do a meditation for anxiety, for soothing anxiety. And I absolutely fell in love with meditation, doing it this way, with somebody guiding it, a voice that was soothing with background music and being able to lay down and it was just transformative. I could feel myself, I could feel inside my body unwinding. It really made me very aware of how much tension I just walk around with. I walk around with tension, you know, basically head to toe. And meditation really taught me that I could let go of that, even if it was only for a few minutes, that it would unwrap. That's a great relief for our bodies to be able to do that. The other thing I did was a lot of somatic tracking. So this was kind of more after the journaling, after I'd gotten really good at journaling. But I did a lot of somatic tracking. So really tracking that pain. Where is it? Where do I feel it? Or tracking the tension. When I uncover emotion, I track, where do I feel that in my body now? How does that feel? Is it making my stomach clench? Is it making my throat close up? Is it making my shoulders go up? So really just observing both the emotion and the physicality of the emotion, but also, some of those pain symptoms that I was still working with. What do they feel like? Do they shift? Do they get bigger? Do they look like a color? Just all sorts of different things, somatic tracking wise.
Mm. Did you ever kind of, because you were saying that sometimes you would use this somatic tracking to discover where you would feel a certain emotion as you uncovered them?
hmm
Did you ever combine the journaling with the tracking, like journal and then do the somatic tracking after?
I did, and sometimes I would even journal about where I was feeling it. I think that that's really important in journaling, and kind of more towards the end of my journaling, right? I got better, better or more effective at what was helping me. I would actually say, now I feel my shoulders rising. Now I feel, I've been punched in the stomach. This is a punch in the gut. I feel it. It's going all the way through to my spine. And I would actually write that down. And kind of get out of so much story mode in the journaling, and get more into the actual emotion. What is my actual emotion? And then where do I feel it in my body?
Oh, I love that. I never heard of this before. I love that. Where do you stand right now as far as like healing a lot of what you would call TMS or mind body symptoms?
I f- See, it's fun, we're I feel 100% pain free, chronic pain free. Doesn't mean if I don't smash my toe that it doesn't hurt, but
Yeah.
I don't have any chronic pain. So zero. zero chronic pain. Um, Occasionally when I'm stressed, and I haven't been, tending myself, or I'm out of balance with my boundaries, or not, speaking to myself with an authentic voice, occasionally I will get a symptom to come back, right? One of my old friends will come back, and I'm like, hello, I see you. Something's out of balance. And I have great compassion for myself now. I was never very compassionate towards myself. I always drove myself, high sense of responsibility. Um, but I have great compassion for what I've been through, and great compassion when those symptoms arise. And I take note of them, and I realize that I'm out of balance somewhere in my emotional life. And sometimes I'll take to my journal and it'll reveal itself, and sometimes it takes several days and then it will come to me and it's like, "Oh, there you are. There you are." It's almost
Mm.
always, Chaz, a divided for me, it's almost always some sort of a divided mind situation, and Sarno had a book called The Divided Mind, and it's my favorite book of his, even though I think he wrote it for, um, practitioners to really use and not the general public. It had more information in it, and so I liked all that extra information. But the divided mind gets me every time. I feel I'm not a black and white person. I'm very much gray, and I can see all the different aspects, and I feel all these different ways in situations. And for a long time, I judged myself and only allowed myself to see what I considered the good way to feel, or the acceptable way to feel, in a given situation, and not all those other unacceptable ways. And I'm using quotation marks for all those. And so that's one thing that journaling uncovered, is that I have a whole range of feelings, and they're all good. They're all good. All of those feelings are good.
Yes, and that's good. What can you explain a little bit more what you mean by divided mind?
Yes. So for me, the divided mind is when I feel two ways about one thing. So, um, something, I'm trying to think of a specific example. So, I have a grandson. I take care of him often. I have a divided mind there. Um, I love taking care of him. I love him, and I was taking care of him too much, and I was not able to have my life the way I wanted it to be at age 58, because I was taking care of him in my mind too much. I had a boundary issue there, and I had a divided mind of, I love this child. I love helping my son and daughter-in-law. I want to be a vital part of their family and his life. And I want to do things for myself. I don't want to be a mommy again at age 58. I want to be a grandma, not a mommy. And so that's a classic divided mind.
Mhm. Okay. Yeah, because there's probably some like somewhere in there, if you had to like honor your boundaries and offer and be willing to still help him and support your son, but maybe like on different terms or less often, you probably had dealt with some like guilt or other feelings around all that, I'm assuming.
Correct.
Yeah,
It all
yeah.
swirls around in there. There's resentment, and they should know it anyway, and, they're taking advantage of me. No, they're not. You offered. You did this to yourself. It all just kinda swirls around and around and around. It's
Ah.
and so the one of the words that helped me the most was the word "and," because before, when if I was aware that I had those feelings, and I may not have been aware because I squashed so much, but if I was aware, I would always use the word "but I wanna be helpful." So, I feel like they are in this example, I feel like I'm doing too much, but they really need it, and I'm being helpful, and so I totally negated myself.
Mhm.
That first level of feeling. And your body knows when you do that to yourself, right? That's not compassionate. That's not what a friend would do. So now I use the word and for all my different feelings. I I feel like I'm doing too much, and I also feel like I want to be helpful, and I know I can make a difference in their lives, right? So the and is very helpful in when you're talking about feeling different ways about the same subject.
Mhm. And as I listen to you even say the differences, it feels more empowering.
It does. It
It
does.
like it puts you more in choice.
It does. It
Mhm.
does. It's just
Absolutely.
it's all again, all the feelings are valid when you use the word and.
Mhm. Exactly. So, how long did you journal before you really felt benefits in a big way? Not
It
just journal, but
was
all of it, you know?
yes, all of it. It was months. It was months. I think it's really important for people to hear that it can take a while. In fact, my symptoms went bonkers. I got all these old symptoms, like some of my old symptoms that I had given. One of the weirdest old symptom I had was that I had phantom smells at one point.
Hmm,
Um, I had smelled smoke when there was no smoke. That
interesting.
I know it's really weird. That resurfaced. Some of my old fibromyalgia symptoms resurfaced. I have had TMJ symptoms that would cycle through. I had foot pain randomly, and so I just, I kept, I kept hearing, keep going. Um, the symptom imperative is a good sign. If it's moving around, it's a good sign, and it is a good sign. So my symptoms were bonkers, and I actually went when I first started journaling, went into sort of a depression too, which is very interesting. And I know a lot of people stop this process when they get too high anxiety or too high in their depression. It I think for me, it was just something I had to go through. I had never allowed myself enough tears in my life. I'd always tried to be happy and brave and positive, and the fact that now I was going to allow myself to go back in time and experience emotions, yes, you that might make you a little bit depressed because, and so I had a few months of depression. Um, I did not see anybody for it. It did not. I did not have fear about it because I had not ever suffered from depression before, and I think that that was really key for me because I hadn't ever suffered depression before. When I went through that, it simply was a time in my life that I went through. And so it didn't really catch hold and because there was no fear for me on that, where I think if I had had depressive episodes before and now I'm doing this journaling and depression is coming up again, that would have made me very fearful and it might have stuck around longer.
Yeah, well, you weren't in resistance, and what you resist persists, so
That's right.
yeah.
Oh yeah, way into resistance.
Mhm. So, when you were journaling, I'm not sure if this was your experience, but a lot of times you hear that sometimes when you're first opening up this door for like the inner child to come through and like speak her mind or, share her feelings or release emotions, that because often we are not open to it for so long and we do so much repression that a
Mhm.
lot of times it almost has to like you almost have to peel it back in layers, like you don't get as deep at first until there's like a level of self-trust established. Did you find that to be true for you, or were you able to just really go deep right away?
No, I definitely had to peel it back. I definitely had to peel it back. And one of my little favorite pictures I actually have on my phone is of sort of a swirl. Um, and it says healing is circular.
Mhm.
And that's really how it was. Interestingly, also, during this journaling process, of course, we're journaling about our relationships with other people because we're people and we're in relationship. And so I had to sort of go back and heal relationships. And when I look back now, I didn't realize I was doing it at the time. It wasn't a conscious effort to do this. But now I can see that I actually healed them sort of in the order of least difficult to heal, or more straightforward to heal, or least threatening maybe to heal, to most difficult to heal. So the first one I kind of popped up for me over and over again was my father. And my father had passed away. So I think that maybe was an easy subject for me to go to at first,
Mm,
um, because he wasn't here adding stressors to me still, right?
mhm.
I'm an adult now, and he's not even here. So, and interestingly, again, um, the last, um, I guess, relationship that I worked through was my relationship with myself.
Yeah,
Yep,
that
there
makes
it is.
sense. Yeah.
There it is.
Okay, so speaking of self, we know anybody who's ever read any work from Dr. Sarno, we know there's this huge correlation between TMS and mind body syndrome symptoms tied into specific personality traits. And we've kind of already briefly talked about the word perfectionist has come up several times in this conversation. So, on this journey of discovery and healing this relationship with yourself, um, what other personality traits did you discover were playing a role in these symptoms manifesting?
Self-critical for sure. In the beginning, I didn't consider myself a perfectionist, and this is kind of humorous. I didn't consider myself a perfectionist because I knew that that was not something you wanted to be. So I was so perfectionistic that I didn't even consider myself a perfectionist. So yeah, but now clearly it's laughable, and so but I could recognize myself as self-critical, um, responsible for others. Um, Definitely a goodist. I want to do good and see myself as doing good, and um, be seen from others as being a good person, and being a good girl was highly valued when I was growing up. So I think those, probably the self-critical and the goodist, are the ones, and those, interestingly, are the ones that I have to, remind myself of still to this day. I mean, my work continues, right? Even though I'm pain free, doesn't mean I'm not still a human with, all my own little issues. And so I have to continually remind myself that I'm not a goodist, right? I do have all these layers of emotions. Um, and that's great. That makes me a whole person, a three-dimensional person.
Hmm. What are some of the ways that you shift out of these dominant traits into more supportive traits that, support your well being as life continues?
I think awareness is one. I have some people in my life too that also are on their own healing journey, and they will check me when I start to get the voice. But also, my body will tell me, right? Your body will send you messages. So I'm very in tune with my body now. And when I start to get old symptoms or a new, strange, bizarre symptom, I always look what is out of balance. I'm always immediately going. Sometimes my first go to is, oh, I did something, and I think physically because we're trained for that, and then I
Hmm.
immediately go, not for you, probably, Anne. Um, what's going on emotionally? And so I recheck myself. And, have I been speaking critically to myself? Have I been pushing myself too much? Have I been expecting too much of one little person? Have I, gone off of my side of the street and worried and tried to be responsible for other people. Um, those are boundary issues, and sometimes we have to have boundaries with ourselves, right? We have to, not listen to things that are going to upset us, and um, not get engaged with conversations that are going to go nowhere and are going to be upsetting, and not cross our side of the street, and just stay in our lane.
Absolutely. And I wanted to point out too, like earlier you said, when your body sometimes, when symptoms show up, because you're human, so things, you're living life, you're in relationship, you're going to have things come up. You were saying you explore this, you explore like what it might be. And you had said sometimes you kind of can quickly find the answer, and sometimes it takes a couple days. And I think that's so important, because I think a lot of us, I know that I'm guilty of this, is if something comes up, I sit down, I grab my pen, I grab a journal, and if I don't like have the solution or the answer, I don't figure it out immediately. I like almost want to give up or write it off, or like be like,
Hmm.
"Oh, this isn't working." When the
Hmm.
reality is sometimes we actually just need to be patient.
Mhm, mhm, and sometimes it comes in the most when you open yourself, it comes in the most unique ways. Um, it might come to you when you're out on a walk. It might come sort of, for me, it comes when my brain relaxes a little bit, because,
Yeah.
repression is real, and I still repress even though don't want to, and I know that it's not healthy. It still exists.
Mhm.
So, and sometimes repression is good. When you're in a crisis, you can't fall apart into a puddle right there, right? I mean, so sometimes repression is a helpful characteristic. It's just that I had learned to take it to an extreme and never went back and processed my emotions. I was always calm. I was always handling everything perfectly in my mind, and making myself sick in the process.
Mhm. Mhm. I also love that you brought up how you have people in your life who are also on the journey and can kind of check you or hold you accountable. I think that's so important and so valuable when we have people who love us enough to hold us to our truth and help support us in those ways.
It is. It's wonderful to bounce ideas off of one another, and it's wonderful. This whole idea of the mind and body being connected, and the mind not only processes pain, but can actually cause it sometimes, is a new idea. And so when you have people who can accept that idea with you and affirm you in it, it's really vital.
Hmm. Absolutely. You said that, well, you kind of started explaining some of these random old symptoms that just resurfaced as from symptom imperative, as you were on this like deeper, like inner exploration and healing work. Do you mind sharing just like some of the other things that you have healed along the way, other than like the back pain?
Sure. And I'm going to go, I do, I'm going to go fast through the
Yeah,
list,
that's fine.
because, I, because they were diagnoses given to me, and I sought treatment for them, but they aren't the issue, right? We know now there's
Right.
just one diagnosis, and it's this mind body TMS, whatever you want to call it. Um, yeah, so so this is why I breeze through it, but I think it's important for people to recognize themselves. I know I would have wanted that at the beginning.
Hmm.
So I had back pain throughout my whole life, um, and it was always attributed to scoliosis. I have 11 degrees or whatever of curvature in my spine. I have leg lengths that are different. Um, I was in my 40s. I had stomach pain in my 30s, which was pretty debilitating. And it caused me to have, bizarre diets. I went down the whole diet rabbit hole with the stomach pain. In my 40s, I was diagnosed with fibromyalgia, chronic Lyme disease, TMJ, benign positional vertigo. I had a year, I guess that might have been my 50s, but a year or more of just being so dizzy I could hardly stand up. I've got bulging disc, L4, L5, compression. I was diagnosed with Hashimoto's. I've had migraines. I had that weird smelling smoke thing that I told you about. I've been diagnosed with adrenal fatigue. And my very favorite diagnosis is that I have not enough fatty deposits on the bottom of the heel of my foot. Because I had
Okay.
foot pain, and that's the only thing they could find.
To blame, yeah.
Yeah.
And for the most part, all that stuff you just rambled off, like, that's all pretty much mitigated now other than, like, at least from a chronic standpoint, like, you might
Oh,
have
it's all
something
gone. Yeah,
it's
it's all
all
gone.
gone.
I mean, I still have curvature of the spine. I still got the same
Yeah,
little
yeah,
old
yeah.
spine I've always had, but
Yeah,
there's no pain associated with it.
right, or you still have, like, the same, like, MRI scan, like, results,
I
but
mean, yeah, I mean, I avoid MRIs like the plague now because I don't.
yeah.
I mean, in my mind, they just increase fear. So now,
Mhm,
if I was in a car accident, yeah, now that's a different story, right? Or an injury, that's a different story.
mhm.
I was in a boating accident a couple of years ago, and injured my kidney, lacerated my kidney. I absolutely followed to the letter everything that the doctor said, 100%. So, injuries, this is a different story.
Totally. I mean, and when you think of, you said car accident, I was thinking even in Dr. Sarno's book, he even talks about whiplash, how that's actually like
Mm,
generally a TMS thing, how in other countries where there's other countries where that's just not even a thing, where there's not like lawsuits involved and stuff. It's like all about what's in vogue, what the brain finds to be in vogue.
right.
That's like a whole nother
That's a whole,
story.
yeah. Well, and that you might have an injury from a car accident, and your
Hmm.
neck might go forward and back, and it might be sore for a while,
Yeah.
but it's going to heal. It's not going to be sore for a year or
Right.
more, or
It's not like you suddenly have a bad neck for the rest of your life.
right, right.
Yeah.
That's the
Yeah.
difference. The
Mhm.
the acute nature versus the chronic nature is the difference there.
Right. Well, yeah, that's a lot of stuff. That's crazy. Aside from personality traits that you think might have played a role, do you have any insight on what other key factors in your life might have led you into all of these TMS mind body symptoms?
Um, I yeah, I mean, again, going back to that very first exercise I did where I matched symptoms when they appeared and what was going on in my life, I could definitely see um, stress or you know sadness or some sort of um, life shifting event around that time, right? So, a death of a parent, trouble in my marriage, I could definitely correlate it one to one.
Hmm.
So, we go through life and we have to live it and we live it with other people and stuff happens.
Hmm.
And, and that's not going to stop for me. Stuff still happens. Um, and I know now that my body may feel that. And I have tools now that I can help myself.
Absolutely.
One of the things that happened and is kind of a continued source of stress is I have a transgender child. Um, that's a really good, like, clean cut example of a stressful life event that was the classic divided mind. Um, because when your child comes out as transgender, you love that child, and there's so many emotions for a parent. It's so emotional for the individual. There's so many emotions for the parent. There's for me, there was never a question that I loved my child and would support my child and affirm my child to the ends of the earth. And I also was deeply worried and I was fearful for them and I was fearful for their health and I was fearful for what the future would hold, with how much discrimination they would face. What kind of medical stuff would they want to do? I mean, this is a child I had fed organic strawberries to, and now they want to, take medicine and, for gender dysphoria, and it just is a flood of emotions. I was deeply angry. I was angry at the world. I was angry that the world was not a better place for transgender individuals. I was angry about the discrimination that transgender people face every day, and now my child had to face it too. Um, and I did not take care of myself. I totally threw myself into being an ally and forgot to process all those emotions. And so I had to when I went through the journaling, I had to unravel all that. Um, that they were complex emotions. I'd seen it. Had seen it in support groups for other parents. I'd seen it a million times played out with other parents. I just had suppressed them for myself.
Mm. Did you discover this pre-2017 or post-2018?
That he was trans?
Mhm.
Yeah, no, it was pre-2017.
Okay. So this was
Yeah,
part of all the unfolding when you were actually going through the healing,
right,
the healing work.
right,
Okay.
right. When he came out, I was like, "I am your champion. I will help you. I got this." Again, I'm calm. I'm going to research this. We're going to do the best we can for you. I love you. All great things to say to your child.
Mhm.
And I never processed my own emotions. That's the key part.
Right.
That's the key part.
Did you notice any specific, you don't even have to say what it was, but did you notice at that time, was that one of the situations where you really noticed a correlation to onsets of emotion or of physical symptoms?
It was one of the big ones.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think the death of my father was a big one, but I can go back. We've been married 36 years, but there was a point in time where we were not in sync. I can go back to that time as a big one. Um, you know, and so much of this again is personality driven. These same
Mhm.
things can, life is going to get lifey, and it's going to happen to somebody else. Happened to my husband. A lot of these things happened to my husband too. He lost his father. He has a transgender child. He was in the same marriage I was in, but he didn't have chronic pain. So,
Right.
that's the difference. That's why the personality, and sort of that, childhood upbringing and that sets into motion how
Mhm.
critical you are of yourself, um, and that's where it all came together for me.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I really like that you brought that up. I had another guest on the show and I loved his analogy. He talks about like how we have like basically a bucket and the
Mm,
bucket it's only so big. So it only has so much threshold. Like you can only fill the bucket so much. And it's like imagine it being the brain and the brain wants to keep you safe and the bucket is getting full. Well, then the brain needs to like do something like send some kind of message via pain signal or illness or something to get our attention because the bucket is like about to overflow, if you will, right?
right.
And like what he's explaining is like everybody's bucket is different. Like we like now that you're doing this work, more than likely you're building the volume up that your bucket can store through resiliency, but we all come with different levels of buckets, and the buckets are filled via stressors, traumas, whether it's physical trauma, emotional trauma, chemical trauma, and having all such different unique lives and different backgrounds. So you and your husband can go through these same things, but your bucket is different than his bucket, and like you just
Mhm,
said, sometimes these stressors are our own personality traits.
mhm. And I used to back in my fibromyalgia days, I used to even say, "My bucket is full."
Hmm.
That was a phrase, like, "I cannot handle one more thing. I have got my bucket is full."
Yeah.
Right? I'm just gonna lose it if one more drop goes in there.
Yeah, you knew it. You just knew it intuitively.
Mhm, mhm,
Yeah, when I first had like my perfect storm, I could feel it in my nervous system. I remember saying like I like my nervous system is like tapped out. Like I can't handle one more like nothing stressful. Like I knew that my nervous system was on the like brinks.
mhm,
Like you can just
mhm.
feel it.
Mhm. And see, that just drives it's a sad thing, right? Because it just drives more fear. Like, now you're
Yeah.
like, now I honestly, I did feel like my body was very fragile. I felt like I
Mhm.
was fragile. I definitely felt like my body was fragile, so I had to keep myself small and safe, and not upset the apple cart, right? I mean, just traveling, I went to gr if I had to travel, I went to great lengths to make sure that I had the right pillows and, water that I could drink and, you know, fresh fruit and I'm like all this stuff just to try to keep the equilibrium as much as possible. And, I none of that now. None of that is needed now. I mean, it's just not needed now.
Yeah. What did you do? Because, like, there's one thing to starting to heal some of this, this trauma, this stored emotional energy, becoming more aware, making conscious choices to shift out of certain patterns, behaviors, personality traits. But what did you find was like a catalyst for you to undo this fragility, to get to a point where you felt confident enough that you no longer had to feel fragile?
Mhm. It was a slow, building up of proof, right? So, um, I carried a water bucket and nothing happened to my back. Note that. I've been, I lifted a suitcase and nothing happened to my back. I traveled, didn't have enough water for many days, and I'm fine. I'm thirsty, but I don't have, a UTI. I don't have chronic pain, right? I didn't get sleep last night because of some reason, and I'm still able to function fine the next day. Right. I know that I will sleep eventually. I am not in fear over it. So it's this culmination of these little proofs that you can do it, that you aren't fragile. Look, I just did this thing. Look, I just did this thing. Look, I just did this thing. Um,
Hmm.
it's almost the same as when you're looking at the proof for how it might be my body and you're going back there and thinking what was happening in my life when these things appeared, sort of the same sort of a list, right? um, and so it's a I will say, I had gotten myself maybe 75, 80% healed. They hate you to put numbers on it. I don't know who they is, but everybody says don't put numbers on it, but it's very helpful for other people. I had gotten myself 75, 80% chronic pain free, and I wanted 100%. And I seem to have plateaued. I wanted 100%. And I hired a coach. I hired a TMS coach at that point and said, this is what I've done. This is where I am. Um, I want the rest of the way. And she was great. She is no longer in practice. Otherwise, I would recommend her to everyone. But she no longer does it. But it was really helpful. And for me, what she said was one of the things that she said that was most helpful for me personally was, "You're already healed." I kept saying, "I
Hmm.
want to heal all the way. I want to heal all the way." And finally, she said, "Wait, wait, 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 wait. You're already healed. There's nothing wrong with you. You're not healing a bad back. You don't have a bad back. There's nothing to heal." And that was just, for whatever reason, it just clicked for me. It just clicked for me right then.
Hmm.
That last piece went in there. Now then I had more work to do though, Chaz. I had more work to believe it, right? But that was the I had more of that proof gathering and more of the self-talk and more of really being compassionate for myself. Um, that yeah, it's taking a while, and you are good at this, and you are doing a great job at it, and you've gotten your symptoms this far, and you will continue because you are already healed. It's a
Yes.
matter of getting the brain used to it, getting that brain wired that, yep, you don't need to fire in this way. This is not the path anymore to get my attention.
Hmm. Yeah, because when we're still, and I know we use that word, all the time in the podcast. And a lot of times I always kind of interchange it with becoming, like not
Mhm,
healing, but becoming more of the truth of who we are.
mhm.
But, it's like one of those universal words that we use to kind of understand the journey. But it's true because when we're so focused, if we become like super hyper vigilant on like this mindset that I need to heal, I need to heal, I need to heal, we're essentially saying, I need to be fixed, I need to be fixed, I'm broken, I'm not enough, I'm not enough. Like, so when you get down to the root of it all,
Right,
and
it's
then
just
we
more
don't,
pressure.
yeah, more pressure,
More
and then
fear, more self-criticism, more I'm not
you're
doing it right.
right,
Mhm,
and then you're, like, actually seeking something that doesn't exist out there because it already is in here.
right,
Like, it's yeah,
right.
so it's very interesting.
I see that too with people when they start to do the journaling. If journaling is their mode, they're looking for the aha, the one suppressed thing. And it's just, I mean, maybe it's there. And if you're one of those lucky people where it's one suppressed thing and you find it and you're cured, I celebrate you. But that was not my case, right? It wasn't one suppressed thing. It was a lifetime of suppressing. Um, all those aspects of myself because we don't want to I did not want to see that I am petty. I did not want to see that I'm jealous. I did not want to see that I'm vengeful. I did not want to see that I'm scared shitless sometimes. I didn't want to see these things in myself, and yet
Mhm.
they live there, and they're really beautiful when once you look at them.
Yeah, I love that. What do you think's been the biggest lesson that you've learned through this whole experience?
I'm not sure if this is the lesson or if I might use the word gift.
Sometimes they're,
Yeah.
this one and the same.
The biggest gift was really getting to know Anne because I had lost her somewhere in life, trying to be um, the perfect businesswoman, trying to be the perfect mom, trying to be the perfect wife, trying to, you know, I had lost her entirely. And so the gift was finding her again.
Oh, that's so beautiful. And she's probably so grateful.
She's very grateful. Yeah, I mean, she likes to go out dancing now. We have a grand old time.
Oh, I love that. I love that. That, like, actually made me, like, get teary-eyed.
I
Oh,
know.
okay.
I
I'm
know,
like,
me
"Okay,
too.
okay, I can do this." Um, what are some of the other, I mean, I don't know that it can get better than that, coming back, like I said, coming back to the truth of who we are, finding
Mhm.
ourselves again, reconnecting with ourselves. I don't know if it can get better than that, but what are some other really awesome ways that have helped, that you've benefited from doing this work, especially beyond the physical symptom relief?
Well, healing relationships, right? So when this is a kind of another a beautiful gift. My father had passed, but my mother is still living. And so our relationship the last couple years has been better than it ever has. And she's 95. What a
Oh, wow.
gift to be able to do that, to be able to really heal. And I've always loved her, but just to love her on a different level because, during my journey journaling, she kept coming up sometimes and coming up sometimes, old hurts. And then finally one day I just totally understood her. I totally understood what it was like to be trapped, to have the intelligence that she had, and she's 95, remember, to be a housewife and to be delegated in the role of a housewife when you have all your own intelligence and to have your own identity wrapped into your husband's identity. I
Mm.
just totally understood her in a different way and just forgave everything. And our relationship has never been better. And it's a gift, right? Because she's still living.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. Because, we don't always get that opportunity.
And I know she feels it. I know she feels, you know, when I would call her before and she would say, love you. And I'd be, love ya. Like real, but now I say, I love you too, mom.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Ah,
My marriage has never been better because I'm a real person now. I'm not trying to manage everything. Um, so I would say, healing relationships that mean the most to me was also a gift. And it was not
absolutely.
one that I thought I needed to do, and it wasn't and it was not one that was, planned. It was just, a byproduct.
Yeah, it's almost like you're like, Man, this is I just thought I was gonna heal some symptoms and some back pain, but this
Right?
is like next level."
Right, right, and I had heard people at the beginning of the journey say, "Someday you'll thank your body," and I'm like, "No, I won't."
Yeah. Yeah.
No, I could not believe that when I, could not even move out of bed. I could not believe that was true. Um, but
Right.
but it and then I put a lot of pressure on myself. I've got to get so well that I can thank my body, and and that
Yeah,
didn't work
yeah.
either.
That
Um,
pressure
but
too.
but
Yeah.
letting it happen organically, then you just get there. And then you're
Yeah.
like, "Oh, yeah, I really, really am grateful. I really am grateful."
I think that's the circle that you talked about, that healing is like a circle or whatever, or
Mhm,
circular, because it's like it makes me think how I was thinking of this the other day, like, oh, I need to be healthier before I can create the life I love. And it's like, no, you need, like, no, it doesn't work that way. Like, part of
mm,
the reason you're not healthy is because you're not living the life you love. So it's
mhm,
like, it is circular. It's like, no, you actually have to like go out there and live the life you love. And that
mhm,
adds to the healing. And it's like, okay, I want to feel well. Well, I have to heal my relationships to feel my best, like
mhm,
it's all
mhm.
it's all circular, like it all affects each other.
It does, it does.
Yeah.
And we fool ourselves when we think that we have it all handled.
Yeah.
I
Absolutely.
think that's that should be your key. Are you perpetually calm in crises? Here's your key. And we wanna be calm, and I still am calm in a crisis. Um, and after the crisis, I allow myself to feel those emotions. I know I need to process them.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's a time and place for sure.
Mhm.
If you could share only one message with the world for the rest of your life, what would that message across all humanity, that's it, one message, what would you share?
Um, I would share a message to humanity. I would share, be kind to each other and be kind to yourself. Have compassion for each other and have compassion for yourself.
Absolutely.
Something that seems in short supply in recent years.
Kindness and compassion.
Yes.
Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely.
Mhm.
We'll get back there.
I
I
think so.
believe it.
I
Mhm.
think so.
Through all this, you have now developed your own coaching practice. And I know through our conversations off air, that you have a pretty unique business plan, a business model compared to what I've actually, heard about otherwise. And, um, you know, we've discussed also there's a lot of choices out there these days, like people, whatever it is that leads them to discover that all this, this whole entire list of diagnoses all ends up being labeled, one, which is, sometimes referred to as TMS, sometimes referred to as mind body syndrome, also in the brain rewiring community often referred to as limbic impairment. But it all has to do with the mind body. And there was a time where we didn't know much information at all and didn't have many choices on what to do. We didn't really know what to do, but now it's like kind of overwhelming. There's this coach and that coach and this program and that program and all these different options. And I don't know. I think that generally they say that too many choices can be incredibly overwhelming, especially to an already dysregulated nervous system.
Right.
So I think your coaching model is pretty brilliant. And I was wondering if you could just share a little bit about what your idea is and what are some of the factors that you consider when you help guide someone on the right path.
Sure. And this is something I never thought I would do, but, in the spirit of not staying small and not staying safe, I've opened my own business. And it's something I've been helping people in an unofficial capacity for many years, but now I'm making it official now. And so what I do is I meet a person where they are, and I get to know that individual, what their learning style is, what their past attempts at maybe healing have been, what kind of trauma they have in their background, what kind of therapy or not a whole lot of therapy or awareness of their emotions do they have right now? What kind of financial and time constraints are they working with? And then even just what kind of preferences they have in their in learning or in working. Um, I think I mentioned that journaling appealed to me because I like to write. People that have you know a history of having issues with writing or just don't like to write, that's going to be um, that's probably not the helpful method for them. They're going to be more focused on the writing part of it than what they're getting out of it. So I kind of like get to know the individual and their learning styles and their trauma and their financial and time constraints and put it all together and offer them basically a menu of recommendations of other people's programs that I think would be helpful to them. So I've got clients following Adam Heller. I've got clients following Nicole Sachs. I've got clients following Alan Gordon. I've got clients following Dr. Dan Ratner. I've got clients that I recommend, hey, a TMS therapist is really where you need to go. I got clients who I would say, TMS physician is my recommendation for you. So depending on their own level of doubt and how much money they have to spend, etc. And so that's my business plan, and I came upon it pretty organically, just helping others in realizing one, my strength in my work and my career was matching people with work that would be satisfying to them. That's what I did. And so this a natural fit here of getting to know a person and their personality and kind of matching it with a program that is going to have high likelihood of success, and also taking in consideration some of the financial and time constraints that a person has.
Mm, mm.
So I don't have a program, but I match them with a program. I give them a menu of suggestions and say, this is what you'll find, using the Curable app. This is what you'll find if you follow Dr. Dad Ratner, and kind of, just give them and kind of narrow down their choices, but still
Mhm.
giving them choice because a person needs to be in control, and what appeals to you about those things. And then I check in, we have, it's not just a one shot. Getting to know someone takes a couple of times, so it's not just a one shot. And then they have me on email forever. They can ask me questions, and we have follow up sessions. Is it moving? What kind of relief are you getting? What else is coming up for you? What are you liking about the program? Where are you stumbling? And I might make another suggestion at that point, and I may not. If we're getting movement and we're having shifting or any sort of breakthroughs, then they're on the right path, and we're just going to stay there.
Absolutely. That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, that's really great because it can be really overwhelming for people to be like, oh my God, there's this, there's this, there's this. What should I do? I want to do this. Maybe I should try that. And, it is good for us to be our own experiment. We are the best science. We're the best form of science, our own experiment, being our own experiment, trying things out for a sustained amount of time to know if it's really working. But sometimes the amount of options can be so overwhelming.
Right.
So I think this is awesome because you literally help narrow it down for people so that and like refine these options so that they cannot feel that overwhelm and have a little bit more
Mhm.
guidance and direction.
And, there's a saying that says, "Don't TMS about TMS," right? So we can, because of our little perfectionist personalities, we can go down the rabbit hole of having to learn something else and having to learn over here, and maybe this is the answer, and maybe that is the answer. And we're kind of
Hmm.
used to doing that already if we've had a lot of symptoms. Oh, I should try this diet. Oh, I should go to this specialist.
Hmm.
Oh, I should lay on this foam roller. Um, so we're kind of used to that pattern anyway, and that's not helpful.
Right.
That's just feeding the fear that feeds the pain. So we want to kind of break that down, have some confidence um, in what we're doing, and I think I bring that.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, because if you do try something for like a sustainable amount of time, like maybe if you're just journaling like a mad woman for an entire year and you're not feeling relief, then it might be time to experiment with something else.
Right, right,
There's a reasonable time frame for things, or there's a natural progression. Like you kind of started with journaling and incorporated meditation and then kind of moved into somatics.
right, right.
But yeah, definitely good to not have that overwhelm and have some support and guidance in refining the options. So that's really a really creative, unique twist. I like it.
Thank you, thank you.
Yeah. How can people get in touch with you?
I have a website. It's called Paths Beyond Pain. So PATHS beyondpain.com. And I'm on Instagram, so at Paths Beyond Pain. And I also have a private Facebook group called Paths Beyond Pain, again, plural with the paths. And it's a private group, and it's not really big yet, so that's going to be fun because you can get a lot of individual attention there. And it's free. Obviously, Facebook's free and Instagram is free. I make a lot of content available, and I really like helping people. At the end, that's one of my core values, is helping people and making the world a better place. Whether it's an improved social situation or social condition, or a personal condition like you're now out of pain. So helping people is pretty much the driving factor for me. But anyway, the private group, there's some questions that you answer there, just to get you in. Basically, will you abide by the rules and be respectful? And it's a great place to find support, in a kind of a smaller forum than some of the other TMS forums.
Awesome. I love it.
So Paths Beyond Pain is the domain across all platforms.
Fantastic. And I will, of course, have links in the show notes. And Anne, do you have any just final message or anything else that you feel called or inspired to share with everybody as a final message or final note?
I think I will say it's okay to be fearful. I had a lot of fear going into this. I had a lot of hope too when I started, and then but I also had a lot of fear. So I think it's okay to be fearful. We know that fear kind of drives the pain, but I think it's okay to be fearful. We can learn how to examine it. We can learn how to watch it more as an observer instead of getting swallowed by it. But avoiding fear, or worse yet, um, not admitting that you're fearful, is not helpful. So just kind of sit with your fear and learn some ways to activate the calming parasympathetic system, and just know that it's okay to be fearful, and suspend your disbelief and try something.
Hmm.
Try something. Go ahead and try it.
I love that. And I think that is so important to make mention, because what we don't want to do is get stuck where we're like afraid of being afraid, right? Like, have you ever
Right.
been there? Like, oh my God, I'm afraid. Well, shoot, I shouldn't be afraid. Now I'm afraid that I'm afraid, because if I'm afraid, then this and this and this, and then I can't do this and this and this. So now I'm scared of being scared. Like,
Right.
so it's
Right.
like you just said, like, yeah, just sit there and be like any other emotion, fear is just an emotion. So acceptance, and like any other emotion, like, hey, this is showing up and that's okay.
I see that with anxiety. I work with a
Mhm.
lot of LGBTQ clients, and almost all 100% have anxiety. And then there's
About
anxiety about having anxiety, and then you're
Mhm.
anxious about the amount of anxiety that you have about your anxiety. And so
Mhm.
it's.
Right, because you make up a story about what that anxiety says or means or is going to become or what it's going to create or do. So then you're
Right,
anxious about, yes, it's
right,
just this like vicious like spiral that we can get stuck in that we don't want to. So yeah,
right.
it's okay. It's just another emotion and it's okay.
Right, we're just gonna watch it, kind of
Hmm.
become more of the observer instead of
Yeah.
in it, but
Yeah.
but still be with it. That's what's helpful to me.
Hmm. I love it. Beautiful way to end a wonderful conversation. And thank you so much for being here, for showing up, for being vulnerable. I have to say, you're one of the very few episodes that choked me up to the degree. I had moments where I couldn't get myself to say a word because I was like, if I say a word right now, they're going to hear my whimpering.
And
So,
that's good, right? We like emotions. All emotions
uh,
are beautiful.
yeah, I was like, I'm just gonna have to have this awkward pause of silence for a moment.
I know.
Yeah, so thank you. That was really beautiful, and I really appreciate it. And I know that everyone listening will also really appreciate it. So, great job, and thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me. I enjoyed it.
All right, that's a wrap for now. What do you think? How are you feeling after that episode? Please remember that while no two stories will be the same, and while no two paths to healing are identical, our testimonials are still an extremely powerful component to support others along the way through their experiences. And if you are at a place in your healing journey and you feel ready to share your story, send me a message and let's chat about it. For now, have fun with the mirror challenge and create a great week.